Good morning, how we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to answer a question sent in by Steven about people who tend to sandbag or slow play some bigger hands within their range. So Steven's question is this: I have a local 1-2 game which has two villains, both elderly, that have gotten me more than once in the same way. They are both super passive, so much so that they will limp with big pocket pairs and many other hands. I've been bitten hard when I hit a hand and then it goes back call, back call, back call, and they show queens to my top pair of tens. How would you suggest combating this passiveness? So first and foremost, know that you are 100% not alone here. In fact, this was one of the biggest things that I had to work on and do some serious exploration on when I first started making my major transition from playing pretty much exclusively online to playing a lot more live poker. Dealing with people that were playing things in very, very slow manners, especially pre-flop, when it came to monster hands like kings, queens, ace, king, was something that took a lot of time to get used to. So these kind of players are definitely not uncommon in live games, especially 1-2, sometimes 2-5. You'll find these kind of players in micro games online, just players that really don't like to be super aggressive until they have some super strong hand post-flop or they have aces pre-flop. These players aren't uncommon, but it's really important to understand what we're working with when dealing with players like this. So for me personally, I find it very helpful to start with the technical exploration of kind of the worst case scenario. So before we look at our hand, before we include any sort of blockers, let's just purely understand from a combo perspective how many combos of really, really strong hands our opponent could have in their preflop range. There may be other players wouldn't play like that. So there are 6 combinations of every pocket pair, which means 6 of aces, 6 of kings, 6 of queens. Let's just say that this person is going to play all of them very, very passively preflop. Fine. Again, maybe we don't assume all players do, we just assume that this player is more likely to in this spot for whatever reason. So 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18. And then if we also say, okay, I think they're also going to slow play things like ace king, they're not going to play that very aggressively. That's another 16 combinations, including the suited and the unsuited combos, giving us a grand total of 34 possible combinations of super, super strong hands that they could have in their preflop range that we may not assume another player would necessarily have. And of course, if we look at a spot and say, okay, well, I think they would actually raise here with aces and they're going to limp with all the other stuff, then maybe we discount that out of that 34. 34 minus 6 gets us to 28 combinations, assuming they would raise the aces and play the other stuff passively. Again, not all players do this by any stretch of the imagination, but when you find a player who's more likely to, maybe we include all of those combinations in their preflop passive ranges, or maybe we just include some, but it's really good to start with a worst case count so you understand what kind of the ceiling is for combinations of these really, really strong combos that could be in their passive ranges preflop. And notice that I keep using the phrase passive ranges preflop because you could use the same logic when you're building their limping range, right? Thinking there's some hands they would raise with, some hands they would limp with, and trying to discern what that range looks like. But you could also say the same thing, say you open raise and they 3-bet you. Well, which hands were they likely to put in their 3-bet range and which ones were likely to get put in their call versus your 2-bet range? So it's important to think about it this way because these kind of passive ranges can get built in a bunch of different spots versus open raises, in limping spots versus 3-bets, etc. So it's important to think about it from that point of view. Now, if your opponent is tight preflop, that 34 combos, again, whether it's all of them or a lot of them or a decent chunk of them, that could make up a decent density of their range, and that could be a not so good thing for you. But if your opponent is looser, plays a lot of hands, and they also tend to play these monsters passively, then that 34 combinations may make up a much lower density of the range and as such may not be as daunting. So you need to think about their tightness 2 different ways. Are you talking about tight in terms of they're very, very passive? When they do play a hand, they don't tend to play it very aggressively, and if they do take an aggressive action, it's pretty darn face up with the range. Or is this the kind of person who's tight in the sense that they don't play a tremendous amount of hands? You have a lot of people that play a lot of hands pre-flop, but they play them all very, very passively. So maybe I include all or some of these 34 combos in that range. Or you may have some people that play all of their monster hands really, really aggressively pre-flop. So I may not include these combinations in their overall pre-flop range when they're taking making passive actions. Again, you have to kind of discern who your opponent is, how they're likely to play these combinations, and also think about, are they likely to play these combinations differently against you, right? If you've been playing really, really loose, really, really aggressive, maybe they start slow playing more against you, trying to induce you to raise, and they can start coming after you that way. So you have to use a little bit of your context clues in order to figure out what's going on here. But again, think about that 34 combos and the density of their overall range. Does that 34 combos represent a lot of their range or a very, very small part of their range? That's going to kind of factor in a lot, not only in your pre-flop decision making, but especially in your post-flop decision making when they do choose a passive line pre-flop. So as for my overall approach when I'm playing against players like this is I decide very quickly pre-flop, am I going to add kind of a full amount of those 34 combos into their overall range when they take a passive pre-flop action, or some of them, and then whichever answer I come up with, I'm going to say, okay, carry that into my post-flop decision making. And this becomes very, very important when I'm trying to double and triple barrel with things like top pair, right? When I'm on kind of the stronger side of the spectrum, I really have to be aware of how many stronger hands they might have that I might not assign to another player, right? If, say, we have ace queen, the board comes ace xx, we're deciding if we want to go two streets for value, then we have to say, okay, is this someone who could have something like ace king in their range? If yes, and maybe it's all 8 possible combos of that, then I have to be a little bit more nervous that there are some better combos in their continuance range that maybe I might not assign against someone who's more aggressive, right? If someone tends to 3-bet ace king pre-flop, then I don't have to worry so much about being behind to a lot of top pair better kicker in a situation post-flop. I just have to be aware that against players that tend to slow play these really big monster hands pre-flop, I may have to include some extra combinations. But again, that could be partial, that could be full, and I have to think about that in comparison to the rest of their range as a whole, not just be overly fearful, because that's where a lot of players tend to go really, really wrong here. Because sure, they could definitely have some hands that are stronger than your top pair, or maybe you have a slight overpair to the board. These kind of things definitely happen. But I have to think about their better combinations compared to their overall range as a whole. If they can have some overpairs or some better top pairs, but there's a whole bunch of second best combinations that they can and will show up with and they're going to give action with, then I'm not going to overly fear that sometimes I'm going to value bet myself into a better hand, is what it is, but more often than not, as long as I'm expecting that play is going to be plus EV, then I'm going to continue going for value. So there's kind of two players that tend to play against these slow players. Some people tend to just overestimate how many monster combinations they have in their range and they miss a lot of value, and others just completely ignore any possibility of the better combinations. So either of those decisions isn't going to be absolute best. The real answer is going to be somewhere in the middle. For me personally, when I'm playing live cash, I will tend to include at least some combinations of these better hands, just because a lot of players tend to be very, very slow play pre-flop, especially in like smaller live games, 1-2, sometimes 2-5. So be very, very cognizant of that. I just as a default tend to include some number of combos of them, even if it's not all 34 combos, and that just is what it is. It just means there's some extra combinations that can and will beat me, but it's very, very important that I understand their overall range as a whole, where these monsters fit into that, and are there enough second best combos that I can still justify value betting when I have something like top pair, decent kicker, or slight overpairs, those kinds of hands. So in short, all of this really boils down to improving your hand reading skills, improving your technical ability, and again, none of this math is overly complex. You do this a couple different times, you work through some different ranges and understand what density of that range is made up of these possible slow played combinations, and it will help you feel more confident making better decisions real time. You'll study those decisions off table, and in real time you'll be able to say, yeah, I think this is definitely worth continuing, or maybe I'll slow down a little bit because there are just too many combinations of slightly better hands that they could end up showing up with. Keep in mind, again, of those 34 combos mean much, much less in a range of 300 combos pre-flop, but definitely are a little bit more daunting if, say, your opponent has all 34 of them, but only 120 combos in their overall pre-flop range. These things are going to factor in far differently post-flop, but again, it all boils down to hand reading, some technical understanding of understanding combinations and blockers, and these things are very easy to work on off table. Very important to work on off table as well, though. So if you want to test your ability on these skills, again, combinations, blockers, understanding the technical part of the game a little bit better, you can take a free quiz at splitsuit.com/blocker, test your skills real quick. I think it's about 10 questions long, and don't worry if you're kind of newer to this, you're not 100% sure, there's a full answer key and a full process video there as well. Again, splitsuit.com/blocker, do your absolute best with it, and definitely spend a little bit of time with the answer key, especially if some of these combos just aren't second nature yet. That's okay, you get stronger with it, and that's a great place to start. So Steven, I really hope that helps you understand a little bit more about how to handle these situations. Yes, these bigger monster combinations can definitely be in people's slow-played preflop ranges. It just is what it is, but again, think about them in terms of what is the max number of them, are you looking at a full amount or a partial amount, and how does that compare to the overall density of their range? Keep them in mind post-flop, yes, they definitely can still be there, but how does that compare to other second-best combinations? And think about that when you're looking not only to value bet, but even when you're looking to bluff, thinking about how many combinations that your opponent could reasonably fold, even though there could be a couple extra slow played combos of monster hands, doesn't necessarily mean you want to get overly nitty by any stretch of the imagination. So again, thank you so much for this question. If you have your own poker-related hand or question, you can always ask it at splitsuit.com/ask, and if you wouldn't mind liking and subbing, I would massively appreciate that too. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, as always, good luck out there, and happy grinding.